Welcome, listeners and viewers, to another episode of Citizens' Voices, Citizens Speak Out. I'm Devendra Kanani, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Spokesperson of Friends of Europe. And as ever, what we're trying to do with our Debating Europe platform and our work with citizens that is to, I suppose, serve up questions and issues that are most important and key and are the anxieties of citizens. Each time we've had one of these discussions, we always have an MEP, we have a member from someone from the private sector, and either a research academic or someone coming from a community of interest. So today is like no other. So we have an MEP, we have Google, and we have an entrepreneur to discuss the issues that are at the heart of very much the heart of citizens' concerns across Europe. In some of the largest cities, the largest areas in Europe. So, without further ado, Albert, thank you very much for joining us, and it's great to have you here. This is your second term in the Parliament, and we know that might bring a lot of interest and I suppose difficulties as well at the same time, depending on the colour and the shade of what's going on. What I want to hear from you is, how can Europe really upscale and underpin its infrastructure to be more competitive, be stronger, but also inclusive in its approach to growth and competition?
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the biggest issue that we are discussing right now in Europe. How can we make sure that Europe is competitive, that we are having more of growth and better welfare, so we can have the economic capacity to provide jobs for our citizens, a good welfare, and invest in our security when we have a geopolitical landscape which is very dangerous right now. And for me, I mean, this is crucial. The European Union is a union of we protect freedom, we protect peace, and we protect. We have a market economy, and this union is based on trade and a better economy. And
sure, but I'm going to interrupt you a moment. That's great, but what are you going to do as an MEP and a group of MEPs that can try and create noise, significance, relevance around this issue? What will you do to increase the capacity and competitiveness?
I'm trying to be the voice that the EU need to cut hurdles and bureaucracy for European startups and European companies, because right now we have a situation where startups and our companies spend so much money in trying to navigate in the jungle of bureaucracy, and this is creating lots of costs, money and resources who could be spent on innovating new products, hiring new engineers and the skills that we need, and so they can produce those products which will create the growth in Europe. And right now that is what we're lacking. So what I'm trying to do every day is one thing that I worked for the last couple of months was to make sure that the EU Commission will draw something called AI Liability Directive, which would be an add-on of another bureaucratic law on AI, which we already have. We're trying to implement the AI Act with a lot of compliance demands. So that new law is being withdrawn. I'm pushing to make sure that the GDPR is being opened up so that it will become easier for companies to use data. And why? Because we need to use more data so that we can train AI models.
Sure.
So we can use more AI to develop new products, which means that more people will be hired.
So
in
your
Europe.
mantra is deregulation
Yes.
is a route into creating greater competitive growth. I'm interested by the point you made about GDPR. Are you suggesting that we should lower the standards in privacy around data on GDPR?
No, I think we have a high standard on privacy in Europe, but I don't think that we, European organizations and companies, need to do that much of a paperwork in following the law. We can have high standards without making them, hiring 10 lawyers instead of hiring 10 engineers. So the bureaucracy is a big hurdle. And then we have a lack of capital in Europe. And one thing that I'm working on to make sure that we raise more capital for European companies in Europe is that we need to make sure that the member states are making it easier for European savers to save in the stock exchange. For example, we have 11,000 billion euros that are sleeping in European bank accounts.
Indeed.
And in my country, in Sweden, we have made a system where we have an investment saving account, which more of half of our population are saving their money on, which means that is releasing capitals for Swedish startups. This has to be done across of the EU.
It's very good, and we'll come back to that in terms of what your concerns about the applicability of that across Europe, because it's about time we use different methodologies of investment and different tools. So it's good to hear that. Karen, it's good to have you with us. You're a household name, not your first name, but you are Google in Europe. And so everyone has a view on the private sector's role in using AI for good or bad. How do you, as a company, and also a social player, to ensure that the negative perception of AI can be overcome, but also for it to use AI to leverage equitable growth?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very fair question, to have this anxiety. And I think for everything which is new, people can think, okay, how are I going to adapt? What are the consequences? It's a bit the same that when we had internet coming up for us, it was a lot of changes, but it did trigger a lot of benefits as well. So I think we see a change about the people behavior when they actually start to use AI. And we've seen, some statistics that, they actually don't know that they've been using AI for quite so many years. If they use or Google Pictures, or if they use Gmail, or if they're actually using the search. But they realize that, when they understand it, they actually start to see the benefits. And I think this is what we're trying to basically explain to people. I mean, we see AI as a real game changer for the positive for society. And it's going to help the people to be more productive. It's going to help actually increase the quality of the output. It's going to help transform the industries. Mm-hmm. It's going to help, improve lives, because there is a lot of new science, new medicine, new materials which are going to come out of it. It's funny because a few years ago we thought, okay, we're reaching a point of scientific development. We're not going to develop anything anymore. And now with AI, we're going to have the first, medicine which is going to be created with AI maybe in about a year time. Indeed. We may actually be able to create a fusion energy in about 5 years' time, which is going to be life changer. And all these things, when people are going to see it, it does improve their life, then people are going to basically understand the positive consequences of it.
Indeed. And obviously, surgery with robots is already in place right now. But the concern I think people have is, what are the guardrails of having surgery with a robot and a doctor, or a robot on their own? I think we will need to be thinking about, whilst deregulation is absolutely key, because you hear the private sector say constantly that, one department does something on regulation, another one and a third one, and so you end up having this batch of regulation that's just uncoordinated. So your agenda is really well-meaning, and it's much needed. But if I go to yourself, Zarina, thank you for being here. An entrepreneur, you're from an association that works and represents entrepreneurs in Europe. I imagine you agree with the deregulation agenda, right, on the one hand. But how do you work with the public sector to ensure that we can create the conditions for economic growth and competitiveness, whilst not damaging innovation, but also that actually one of the biggest things is upstream support to scale some of the innovations? What are your views on the role you can play in partnership with the public sector?
Of course, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Of course, I agree a lot with what has been said. MEP Kokolari, we are totally with you on this. If we can first focus on actually enabling AI to happen the best way and to thrive here in Europe, I think it's the first question we have to ask. And also, as Karen just said, I think it's totally normal to be afraid, but fear is not a good motivator for lawmaking. It's not a good motivator for imagining the best society. So first of all, let's make it possible for AI to thrive. My second point is actually for startup and scale up, AI will create a lot of AI and innovation at large will actually create a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities, a lot of innovation in health as an example, but also new businesses, new job creation. For me, what is much more scary, I think, it's not taking this loop, not going there. What will happen? Can you imagine? Do you want to just be lagging behind because we didn't seize the opportunity to innovate and create new jobs. So that's the second point. My third point would be to say that actually AI will probably help creating jobs, but also finding solutions for people who are looking for jobs, who are training themselves. Like we will of course help children. We will have new businesses focusing on these areas, and workers actually will be trained from their childhood to the moment they will enter the market.
Zarina, thank you. This is a question to all of you, and it's great that we have an all-woman panel, by the way, people. It shouldn't be a rare thing. It's an important thing, but we're just acknowledging that. For a question for all of you. When I hear all of what your contributions are, I feel as if we're forgetting that 2/3 of the European population are almost on the poverty line or just above the poverty line. Literacy levels on digital are very, very low. We have generations of young people growing up on a mobile phone or a tablet, even from the pram. How do you ensure that AI doesn't simply repeat the inequalities and the lack of social mobility we have right now being written into the future? Okay. Over to you, Arba.
Well, I mean, historically, what has been made Europe rise into a prosperous continent from poverty to we were the richest continent until recently, is because of use of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, trade and cooperation with other countries. And I think we need to reinvent that again. And we need to give access to more people to use AI. I think it's important that youngsters and children have access to use AI models so they can innovate, be creative, so we can have the future unicorns in Europe. I mean, that's what we did in my country in Sweden. We gave access in the 90s to internet and broadband, and then we got Spotify, Klarna. We did innovation 100 years ago, and we got Ericsson. I mean, we need to reinvent so we can have the future Spotifys in Europe to thrive globally. And right now, until now, Europe have been so much focused on risk-based approach when it comes to legislation. We have to protect everybody from new technology, which has made us lag behind. Now we need to focus to innovation-based approach in our investments, in our legislation, so we can use the technology for a more prosperous and rich continent.
Indeed. So you're saying, I mean, obviously you're saying that Sweden, is an innovation nation. It's being able to thrive and do the things you have. How do you ensure that mindset? What do you do? What are you going to do to increase, I suppose, or improve the mindset within this building, within this, hallowed ground of politicians making decisions on people's lives in relation to AI? Do you think there's an appetite for doing the kind of innovations that you're doing in your country?
I think there has been a dramatic shift just the last half year. My last 5 years in European Parliament, I was fighting with so many people here that were afraid of new technology and AI, and honestly also France was very much against, I would say, an innovation approach. Now they have made a U-turn saying that AI, innovation, tech is so important. They had an AI summit in Paris. So even the people who were skeptic to AI have turned positive, because now everybody understands that this will be the key for Europe's prosper and jobs in the future. And we need really to step up. And I'm sure that we can, but we really need to work much faster than the EU has done until now.
Indeed. There's been a recent report that it's been in The Economist elsewhere that Europe's already lost the race in terms of cloud computing, the data management, etc., because mostly owned by America, and also in terms of the first generation of innovations, which are basically capturing the world more so. But there are ways in which Europe could still catch up in different ways, but on a different agenda, rather than trying to be matching up to China or let's say America. As an entrepreneur, what would you like to see happen? Do you want total freedom with lots of money and go for it? Is that your kind of mantra?
Hard one. I think so. To be honest, I think innovators, when innovating, shouldn't be focusing on what's good, what's wrong, like what's the consequences, and then what's the political questioning behind it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be brought up at some points, but when innovating, the best way is just to be able to imagine, because actually you don't know what you are looking for. You don't know what you will find. Like if you start regulating on something you don't even know, or don't even understand at first, I think it's a huge risk. So once again, for me, first is like freedom to innovate, and then find balance between different stakeholders, including politics sector, including public institutions, and so on, to find the right balance. But at first, when innovating, like it's like creating music, or it's like you go to someone and say, please, like do the best song, but mind like it's not too loud or not too. At first, you have to focus on innovation, on producing new stuff.
Interesting. So, in terms of the innovation that we now have is facial recognition, right? Whose responsibility was in early stages to make sure that it's not discriminatory, that it doesn't invade people's privacy? And that's a wonderful bit of technology. But in your view, just go for it for the moment, and let's see what happens later, because it's her responsibility to make sure it's safe, etc.
Yeah, maybe we can do it at the same time. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying it shouldn't be done by the same people at the same time. But
Okay.
Let's work together to find the best way, right?
There's the rub. We'll come back to you, Arba. But Karen, what's your point of view on this one? Because Google's leading on so much in terms of AI innovations, and you have this innovation built in, if you like. There's a mindset within the company. How do we kind of make sure the guardrails are there, and that people who are least able to participate in the material wealth of society, right? Those who are going to be not enjoying the economic successes that we take for granted. What's the role of a company like yours in doing that?
I mean, first,
Do you see yourself as a role in having to play in that?
absolutely, because we see that our purpose is to serve our users, and we have 2 billion people a day which are using Google products. So we really feel responsibility for that. We were the first company to develop AI principles about how we should use AI and how AI should not be used. And this has been guiding for us, for the last maybe 15 years. The way we see things is that we are responsible to make sure that the models we develop are going to be the best, to serve the best population, to make sure there is no bias, to make sure we have these guardrails, that we have developed basically with the regulators, and we're going to ensure that. But where I wanted to go back to your previous point is that in Europe, there is only 18% of the companies which are using AI. And this is where the growth is. The growth is actually taking all our biggest companies in Europe, they are in the retail, in the food, in the luxury, everything, and to actually equip them with AI, because they are going to cut their cost. They are going to actually grow. They're going to develop new things. And this is where the growth is going to be. And that's very much where we see basically the capacity to help them. And in terms of the people, I mean, everybody basically has, as you said, a laptop or a phone, and everybody's going to use it there. And it's fundamental we develop the education as well. Education is actually a beautiful thing with AI, because instead of having one teacher for 30 kids, you can basically have one teacher, which is basically help 30 kids at the same time. Together with AI, it's like having 30 teachers. And this is beautiful to that. You can adapt to the people, you can make it fun, you can make it interesting, you can see where they are and live their level, and not let them actually, stay on the side. And these are the potential we're talking about.
Are you doing that kind of stuff now? Because what we do know about Europe is that the education infrastructure we have at the moment is over 80 years old. Majority of teachers we have, and there's nothing against the over the 50 plus club, because I'm one of that. Most of the teachers are 50 plus. We can't find young teachers to stay in schools for more than a year or so, because they're on zero contracts. How do you imagine the school of the future? Does Google have a role to play in that?
Absolutely, and I think this is what we need to discuss, because we do have to change the whole society. Yeah. We have to discuss how we change, at high school, how we change the university courses, how all of us get trained, because we all have to work another 20, 30 years. So, and that actually has to be discussed, has to be much more mobile. I mean, the courses we have, which are like 4 years university, are great, but sometimes you just need like cybersecurity experts, and you need a 6 months training, and off they go directly. So we need a much more mobile way of doing things, and we need to train the teachers. Of course, they're not suddenly going to become AI experts. Indeed. So we need to train them, we need to invest into it. And that actually needs to be a real discussion about how we do it together.
What do you see the role that you can play, the parliamentarians play, in terms of enabling our education infrastructure to be improved and upscaled so that we can be a competitive continent?
I mean, most of the work needs to be locally in the member states on how they provide the use of new technologies and AI in schools. And that's why I'm saying that this is really important. What we can do from a European level is to make sure that these rules of how you use data, how you can use AI and not, are clear and simple, and incentivizing companies, organizations, and the public sector to use AI. That's why I'm saying that our rules cannot be too bureaucratic. And also we have a big budget for, more of our budget for research needs to go to AI. I see that the EU Commission is right now pushing a lot about investments on AI and research. We're going to have CERN research AI factories. There is a lot of things going on. What we need to do is to make sure that we also incentivize more private capital, because from the public sector, they cannot do this alone. Innovation is driven by entrepreneurs, innovators, and we need to make sure that the ground infrastructure is there, that people are skilled, that we have access to internet, and it's easy to get access to data. Then let people like you, Serena, to innovate and create the future products. Everybody thought that nobody can compete with Google, with all respect, but we used Google, but probably now we're using more ChatGPT, So this is the beauty of technology, that it's always developing, and we need to let the technology develop.
But would you say that the point that I want to hear from you, do you feel this place is relevant to you? The Parliament. I don't mean that as a philosophical question, but in terms of the work you do as an entrepreneur, do you feel that you are brought in? Are you listened to? Do people like you, Araba, have a conversation with you? People like you and say, we're thinking about this, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, I'm both an entrepreneur and leading an association of entrepreneurs. So I think my job is both to understand how entrepreneurs work and also to play kind of a translator between these two worlds. So for me, it's totally relevant. Absolutely.
Final question to all of you is, we're entering what is going to be like the biggest geopolitical security vortex we've ever had in our history since, let's say, the close of the Second World War. Our world order is being kind of changed quite significantly by certain characters in the world right now who shall remain nameless. Europe has an opportunity because it has the largest innovation fund, Horizon, in the world. Most people don't know that, but it is the largest innovation fund. What would you like to see happening in the next, let's say, in this term, right? We have Ursula von der Leyen back again, but with a really difficult situation again, geopolitically. But AI could be a savior in many, many ways. What would you like her to do as a priority in this next term?
Who should do a priority?
Ursula von der Leyen, the new commission.
I think that Europe usually works best in crisis, and I think and I hope that the European countries really need to work even closely together on how we can build our common security, how we can make sure that Europe becomes the best place in the world to live in. I want to make sure that the EU or Europe becomes the tech continent in the world. That's how we're going to compete globally. That's how we geopolitically will become stronger. And
therefore, what is it that you think you'd like to see change in the approach? Because you've been here for over 5 years. You've seen the Commission. Unfortunately, Ursula von der Leyen has been, we had the COVID, then we've got the war, we've got the energy, and now we have, the American scenario. What would you like them to do differently as a college of commissioners to make sure they do all the things you just said? What should they do differently?
No, I think thanks to Ursula von der Leyen's leadership, the Europe have been together.
Mm-hmm.
For the last years, Russia have been trying to split us. Different authoritarian regimes are trying to split us, but we have kept together. And now when the pressure is even higher, we need to keep even more together. So I think leadership is crucial, and we have the leadership with Ursula von der Leyen. And we really need to work even more together than we've done before. And not only rely our security and our energy or our infrastructure only to one country. We need to diversify. We need to look to new partners. But we always need to make sure that we can be resilient in Europe, to invest in our own capabilities. But we also need to make sure that our cooperation with other parts of the world stays there and not cutting that.
Barbara, thank you very much. What's your one golden wish of the new Commission? as an entrepreneur, what would you like them to do differently?
Just do it. Stop discussing it. Just do it.
Okay. On that just do it note, what about you? What's your view? I mean, I know that it's a political question, but you are everyday household name. What you do matters into society. So what's your wish of what the new commission should do?
Well, I have to say I was very happy to see the compass from the President von der Leyen and the fact that basically there is a commitment to take all the recommendations from Mr. Draghi. And I think that's very much the direction we would like to see. And also making sure that partners like us, can actually be helpful to Europe.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let us know what you think. Stay in tune. Email us, WhatsApp us, etc. Get in touch with social media channels. Let us know what you think. What do you want from the new commission? It's just the heady days are starting, and the world has changed fundamentally since Mr. Trump took over as president. We don't know what lies ahead, but what would you like to see happen? What, from a perspective of citizens, but also policymakers, what are the things that we need to do differently and better, given the world we're in now? Arba, Karen, Zarina, thank you all very much for joining us, and tune in for our next episode of Citizens Speak Up. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.